Coffee shop girl was constantly disrespected by customers. But when she started speaking multiple languages, she amazed everyone who witnessed it and caught the attention of a famous person. Hey everyone, my name is Maya Chen, and I'm 28 years old. I work at Miami International Airport Terminal, and let me tell you, the morning rush at 7:15 a.m. hits differently when you're behind an espresso machine. The constant buzz of gate announcements echoes through the terminal, blending seamlessly with the aggressive hiss of espresso machines and that distinct scent of burnt milk that seems to permanently cling to everything in our little coffee corner. I adjust my apron for what feels like the 100th time this morning and wipe a stubborn drop of caramel off the counter. Then I force that practiced smile onto my face as I look up at the next passenger in line. He's a businessman, probably in his late 40s, and he hasn't taken that Bluetooth earpiece out of his ear since he approached the counter. He doesn't even bother to look up when he places his order. Large Americano, extra hot, no talking, he says curtly, his eyes glued to his phone screen. I nod silently. Not because I agree with his rudeness, but because that's the unspoken rule here at Gate 27. Don't talk back, just serve. Keep your head down and do your job. The espresso hits the cup with that familiar sharp hiss, and I hand it to him without saying a word. He takes it and walks away without any acknowledgement, not even a grunt of thanks. Another customer passes by, then another. At Gate 27, nobody really looks at the barista behind the counter. They only look at the clock on the wall, at their phones, or at the departures board above their heads. But here's the thing about being invisible. It means you notice everything, and I always have. I see the toddler who drops her stuffed elephant twice while her mother pretends not to care, too absorbed in her own travel stress. I notice the security guard who's been flirting with the white receptionist for the past 10 minutes, while completely ignoring the elderly Korean man who's been trying to ask for directions. And most importantly, I see how my presence, my skin color, my enforced silence is either dismissed completely or quietly resented by the people who pass through here every day. I've been working behind this counter for 6 years now. Same uniform, same terminal, same ignored potential. Nobody here knows that I have a degree in linguistics from Howard University. Nobody bothers to ask how many languages I can speak fluently. Even if they did, I doubt anyone would believe that a coffee girl with braids, dark skin, and what they probably consider a slight accent could speak 6 languages fluently: English, French, Arabic, Spanish, Mandarin, and Italian. But those skills don't matter here. Here, my name might as well just be next. Maya! The shrill voice cuts through my thoughts like a knife. It's Veronica, my manager, and just hearing her voice makes my shoulders tense up automatically. Veronica is a Belgian woman in her mid-50s who still wears perfume strong enough to make your eyes water from 3 feet away. She struts behind the counter like she personally owns every single coffee bean in the machine, and today she's wearing that particularly smug expression that means someone is about to have a very bad day. "You missed a spot," she announces, pointing with one perfectly manicured finger at what appears to be a single syrup smudge on the register screen. I bend down to wipe it clean, staying completely silent. This is part of the routine we've developed over the years. Veronica finds fault, I fix it without complaint. But today feels different. Today, she leans in closer, dropping her voice to that low, threatening tone she reserves for moments when she really wants to make sure I feel small. "And fix your posture. You're slouching again," she hisses near my ear. "You want people thinking we hire lazy workers around here?" I straighten up immediately, my jaw locked so tight I can feel my teeth grinding together. The words burn because we both know this isn't really about coffee spills or posture. This is about everything else. About skin color, about class, about power, and about that silent rule of knowing your place in the hierarchy and never ever stepping out of line. Veronica lingers for just a second too long, making sure I feel the weight of her presence and her disapproval. Then she turns and clicks away in her red heels, the sound echoing like a metronome of quiet cruelty across the tile floor. I exhale slowly and in a controlled manner, the way I've learned to do over the years. From across the concourse, I can see my coworker Kelly waving enthusiastically at a security guard. Kelly is blonde, 24, and has this fake smile that's always just a little too loud and a little too bright. She barely touches the register during her shifts, but somehow she always gets compliments from Veronica. She's always the first one sent on breaks, always flirting with customers and staff, always carelessly handling equipment that I end up having to fix or clean up after. I've covered for Kelly's mistakes more times than I can count over the years. Despite all this, she still calls me background noise when she thinks I can't hear her. Just last week, I overheard her talking to another coworker. People like Maya are born for this. Quiet jobs, nothing fancy, nothing visible. I hear it. I always hear everything. But it doesn't matter anymore. Or at least that's what I tell myself. I learned long ago that invisibility is safer than fighting back. At least, it was safer until today. At exactly 7:33 a.m., something in the air changes. Not the temperature or the humidity, but the attention. The energy in the terminal shifts in a way that makes everyone stop what they're doing and look up from their phones. A woman in a flowing white hijab rushes toward our counter, and I can see immediately that she's in distress. Tears are streaking down her face, and her hands are shaking as she clutches what looks like a boarding pass and some official documents. "My husband baggage someone took," she pleads desperately, her English broken by panic and fear. Arabic words start tumbling from her lips as the stress overwhelms her ability to communicate in her second language. The white receptionist at the nearby information desk freezes completely, staring at the woman like she's speaking in alien code. The security guard who was just flirting with Kelly fumbles around helplessly, looking confused and increasingly uncomfortable as the woman's distress becomes more obvious. I don't think. I just move. Without asking for permission or explaining myself to anyone, I step out from behind the counter and cross the small space between us. I gently touch the woman's arm to get her attention, and when she looks up at me with those tear-filled, desperate eyes, I speak to her. Not in English, but in Arabic. My voice shifts like silk as I switch languages mid-breath. The Arabic flows from my mouth smooth, calm, and with precise pronunciation. The woman gasps in relief, her eyes widening in disbelief and gratitude as she realizes someone finally understands her. "What happened?" I ask her in Arabic. "Where did you last see your husband? What was his name? What gate number were you supposed to meet at?" As she explains the situation, I translate every single sentence for the staff members who are now gathering around us, watching this interaction with a mixture of surprise and something that might be respect. I managed to diffuse the growing tension that was building around this poor woman's panic. I alert the airline staff about the situation, explaining step by step what happened and how they can help recover her missing husband who had been separated during the security screening process. When it's all sorted out and her husband is located, the woman clutches my hand tightly with both of hers. "Thank you. Allah bless you," she whispers to me, her voice thick with emotion and relief. I just smile back at her warmly. "Shukran jazilan," I reply softly. "Thank you very much," in Arabic. That last phrase, whispered quietly in Arabic, means nothing to most of the people standing around us. But it means everything to someone else who happens to be listening. From a leather seat near Gate 30, a man looks up from his phone with sudden, sharp attention. He's wearing a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, has faint stubble along his sharp jawline, and eyes that have clearly seen too much of the world and miss absolutely nothing. He'd been scrolling through news headlines on his phone, headphones in his ears, trying his best to tune out the constant noise and chaos of the airport around him. But that voice, that particular voice speaking Arabic with such fluency and precision, had sliced through all the background noise like a knife through silk. This is David Rivera. He's 29 years old and an award-winning documentary producer who just returned from Cairo where he'd been working on his latest project. His next documentary is already in pre-production, The Invisible Workforce, Unseen Stories from the Front Lines. He stands up slowly from his seat, watching me carefully as I finish helping the distressed woman. I don't notice him at all. I've already gone back behind the counter, slipping back into my quiet, calm demeanor, like nothing extraordinary just happened. To me, this was just another moment in another day, helping someone who needed help because it was the right thing to do. But David remembers that voice. He remembers that phrasing, that perfect pronunciation, that natural ease with which I switched between languages. He'd heard it 12 years ago in a Barcelona train station, coming from a 16-year-old girl who had helped a frightened American teenager find his platform in a foreign country. She had said, "De nada, cuídate," "You're welcome, take care," in exactly the same way, with the same gentle confidence and natural grace. And he had never forgotten that moment or that voice. The terminal continues to feel like a pressurized box of impatience around us. Voices overlap constantly in a dozen different languages. Wheels roll endlessly over the polished tiles. Children scream in the background, and PA announcements buzz and blur together into white noise. I wipe the counter again, even though it's already perfectly clean. My fingers move out of pure habit now, but my eyes automatically scan the crowd like they always do. The woman I helped earlier has already disappeared. escorted away by a flight attendant who now carefully avoids making eye contact with me. It's as if crediting the barista for actually solving a problem would somehow disrupt the natural order of things around here. I don't care. At least, that's what I tell myself. Behind me, Veronica mutters something to another manager in French, not realizing that I can hear and understand every single word she's saying. Ces gens pensent qu'ils peuvent faire n'importe quoi, she says dismissively. These people think they can do whatever they want. I don't flinch or react in any visible way. I simply tuck the cleaning rag away and return to brewing coffee. The espresso machine hisses again as I prepare for another order. Another face that will pretend not to see mine. Another customer who will treat me like I'm part of the furniture rather than a human being with skills and intelligence. But then comes a voice that changes everything. I'm sorry, does anyone speak Arabic? The words cut through the air with raw desperation. It isn't a scream, but somehow it's worse than that. It's pure desperation breaking through the careful politeness that airports demand. The kind of panic that makes everyone in the vicinity stop and pay attention whether they want to or not. A man in a beige thobe stands near the departure gates, clutching his phone in one trembling hand and a crumpled boarding pass in the other. His forehead glistens with sweat despite the air conditioning, and next to him, a teenage girl tugs desperately at his sleeve. She's crying silently, her eyes red and swollen with fear, and the sight of her distress makes my heart clench. The man looks around wildly, trying desperately to make eye contact with anyone on the airport staff who might be able to help him. But no one responds. No one even acknowledges that he's speaking. He repeats his plea louder, his voice cracking with emotion and fear. Arabic, please, someone! My wife! He calls out, his accent thick with panic. They separated us. A security guard nearby turns his head briefly and shrugs, as if to say, not my problem. The gate agent continues tapping away at her keyboard, occasionally glancing up to wave him off without saying a single word, like he's nothing more than an annoying interruption to her routine. I'm already moving before my brain has time to think it through. I don't ask for permission from Veronica. I don't explain myself to anyone or wait for approval. I simply step out from behind the coffee bar and cross the waiting area with purpose, my feet carrying me toward this family in crisis. I speak Arabic, I say softly as I approach them. The man turns toward me, completely stunned. For a moment, he just stares at me like he can't believe what he's hearing. Alhamdulillah, he breathes. Praise be to God. And the relief in his voice is so profound it almost brings tears to my eyes. My voice shifts again, like silk flowing from one texture to another. Smooth, calm, and precise. I switch languages mid-breath, my mouth forming Arabic phrases with the same native ease that I use for English. I ask him what happened, where his wife was last seen, what her name is, what gate number they were supposed to meet at. My tone carries the kind of clarity that makes people listen and trust you, even those who don't understand the words being spoken. A translator isn't supposed to carry emotion in their voice. We're trained to be neutral conduits, but I was never supposed to be just a barista either. I reach for the radio clipped to my apron and bypass the receptionist completely, contacting internal assistants directly in English. This is employee 45,219, I say into the radio with professional authority. We have a priority passenger situation at gate 27. I need urgent multilingual assistance. Arabic speaker on site, possible family separation issue. The security guard who had shrugged earlier now blinks in surprise. You're just a... he starts to say. I don't even look at him. Instead, I lock eyes with the man's daughter and speak to her gently in Arabic. La takafi, I whisper to her. Don't be afraid. Moments later, 2 airline staff members come jogging over to our location. And this time, there's real concern and urgency in their eyes instead of the dismissive indifference I'd witnessed just minutes before. I translate rapidly between Arabic and English, not missing a single beat or detail as the father explains what happened. It turns out that the girl's mother had been rerouted through secondary screening due to what the staff diplomatically calls a computer glitch in the system. But let's be honest, this kind of thing happens more often than people want to admit, especially when you have Arab names and profiles in your passport. The system flags you, and suddenly your family gets separated without explanation or clear communication about how to reunite. 5 minutes later, the family is reunited. The woman bursts into tears of relief when she sees her husband and daughter, and the father keeps repeating, "Shukran, shukran," over and over again. Thank you, while trying to maintain his composure. I nod politely and turn to walk away, considering the matter resolved. But before I can take more than a few steps, the woman reaches out and grabs my hand, then does something that completely catches me off guard. She kisses it. You are the only one who saw us, she says, in broken but heartfelt English, her eyes still wet with tears. My smile falters for just a moment as the weight of her words hits me. I bow slightly in response, then speak with practiced elegance, tucking my farewell in that effortless Arabic that feels as natural as breathing. Maya salama, I say gently. Go in peace. From the corner of the seating lounge, David Rivera stands completely frozen. His coffee has gone cold in his hand, forgotten entirely as he watches this scene unfold. He doesn't know my name, but he knows that voice. He knows that grace under pressure, that natural ability to build bridges between people who can't communicate. 12 years ago, lost and afraid in Barcelona, he had heard that same phrase spoken with the same gentle authority from a girl with steady eyes and calm hands. She had spoken Spanish the same way I just spoke Arabic, like it belonged to her naturally, like she was born to help people understand each other. And now here I am, wearing a coffee-stained apron and saving strangers while everyone else stands still and watches, pretending not to see what's happening right in front of them. He watches me walk back behind the counter, unnoticed by almost everyone in the terminal except for one person, Veronica. The manager's mouth twitches with visible irritation as her eyes scan the passengers who are still thanking me and speaking in animated, grateful voices. She doesn't like this at all. She doesn't like the attention I'm getting, the way people are looking at me with respect instead of treating me like part of the scenery. The next customer in line steps up to the counter, a tall white businessman in an expensive coat who clearly witnessed what just happened. I'll have whatever that hero girl's having, he says with a joking tone, trying to charm the room with his comment, and clearly impressed by what he just saw. Veronica swoops in before I can even open my mouth to respond. She's not a translator, she barks sharply, her voice cutting through the man's attempt at friendliness. Just a barista, please order properly. The man raises his eyebrows in surprise but complies with her demand. Still, he looks at me once more before walking away, and this time it's different. This time, he's looking at me like he's seeing something more than just a name tag and an apron. I say nothing in response to Veronica's intervention, but something shifts inside me in that moment. Not defiance, not anger, something deeper and more powerful than that. Conviction. That night in the employee locker room, I sit staring at my phone screen in the dim fluorescent lighting. The university email glows faintly, casting an eerie blue light across my tired face. This particular email has been sitting in my inbox for months, but I keep coming back to it like picking at a scab. 3 years ago, I had applied to a master's program in international communication at Georgetown University. It was a dream program, exactly the kind of advanced degree that would have opened doors I didn't even know existed. But I've been rejected 3 times over the years, not because of my grades or my test scores, but because my resume apparently didn't show field experience, because I didn't have relevant exposure, because they couldn't see past the job title that said barista, and understand that I was using my linguistic skills every single day in one of the busiest international transit hubs in the country. I scroll through the email again, even though I have every word memorized by now. The rejection still sits in my inbox, unread for months, still stinging like a fresh wound every time I accidentally click on it. I look at my reflection in the metal locker door. Worn shoes, coffee-stained shirt, hair pulled back in the same practical style I've worn for years. But my eyes are still steady, and they haven't given up. Not yet, I whisper to myself quietly, the words barely audible in the empty locker room. 6 languages, 6 years, still here. What I don't know, what I couldn't have possibly predicted, is that David isn't leaving the terminal tonight. He has an important phone call to make. The next morning, the air at Gate 27 feels charged with electricity. Not the good kind of excitement you feel before a vacation, but something colder and heavier, like the oppressive stillness that hangs in the air just before a thunderstorm breaks and destroys everything in its path. I sense it the moment I walk through the terminal doors. Something is wrong. Something has changed overnight. Veronica stands rigidly by the register, clipboard clutched in her hand like a weapon, her lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. Her red heels click across the tile floor like threats with each step she takes, and her eyes scan the counter, the floor, and my shoes with the intensity of a predator looking for weakness. "You're late," she says flatly, not even bothering to look up from her clipboard. I check my watch, 6:58 a.m. "I'm scheduled at 7, I reply calmly. "Exactly," Veronica snaps, turning away without waiting for any response or explanation. Behind the espresso machine, Kelly leans in toward me with a syrup bottle in one hand and one of those fake smiles that never quite reaches her eyes. "She's in one of those moods today," Kelly whispers conspiratorially. as if we're friends sharing a secret. You might want to keep your head down today, Maya. I don't respond to her fake concern. Instead, I grab my apron and tie it with mechanical precision, slipping into my usual morning rhythm. I start filling milk jugs, restocking lids, and checking the coffee grinders, but I can feel it everywhere around me. Eyes watching me, whispered conversations that stop when I get too close, a stiffness in my coworkers' shoulders that isn't just normal morning fatigue. The silence is loaded with something heavy and threatening. Something has definitely shifted overnight, and I can feel the weight of it pressing down on my shoulders like a lead blanket. What I don't know yet is that a video has been uploaded to social media. Around 2:30 a.m., someone posted a 38-second clip with shaky phone camera footage. The title reads, "Barista freaks out at Arab family, gets schooled." The footage cuts in halfway through my interaction with the family from yesterday. There's no context provided, no explanation of what led up to the moment, no background about what was actually happening. Just me raising my voice, calmly and clearly, but raised nonetheless, speaking in Arabic to help a distressed family. Then there's a hard, jarring cut to me, walking back behind the counter, and someone had deliberately layered dramatic music underneath the entire clip. Even worse, they had added subtitles, completely fake ones that bore no resemblance to what I had actually said. The Arabic I had used was gentle, reassuring, and professional, but the video had been carefully edited and altered to make it seem like something entirely different. The caption read, "Is she radicalized?" in bold white letters across the bottom of the screen. My name wasn't tagged in the video, thankfully, but everything else was clearly visible. The airport uniforms, the distinctive signage of our terminal, even the gate number where it all took place. By 6:30 a.m., the clip had been shared across a dozen different Twitter accounts, and a travel blog with over 200,000 followers had picked it up and spread it even further. By 7:10 a.m., Veronica had seen it. And that's why this morning feels like walking into a trap. I don't know any of this yet. I'm just trying to steam milk without my hands shaking, wondering why everyone is acting so strangely, and why the atmosphere feels so hostile and charged. It's Kelly who starts the real trouble, though I don't realize it at first. She walks past me carrying a tray loaded with espresso shots, a special order for the business lounge near Gate 30. Her hip clips the edge of a plastic crate that's been stacked too high with flavored syrups, and I watch in slow motion as the whole precarious tower starts to wobble. One bottle rocks back and forth, then another. I lunge forward instinctively, managing to catch the first bottle before it can fall. But the second bottle, vanilla syrup, spins off the edge of the counter like it's been launched from a catapult. The bottle explodes across the polished marble floor in a spectacular mess, sending sticky vanilla syrup splattering in every direction. It hits Kelly's tray, it hits the counter, and most importantly, it hits the expensive leather duffel bag of a businessman who was standing next to our counter. The man gasps in shock and dismay, staring down at his now ruined bag. Kelly freezes in place like a deer caught in headlights, her mouth hanging open. I blink rapidly, trying to process what just happened and how I can help fix this mess. "I'm so sorry, sir," I start to say, already reaching for cleaning supplies. But Kelly cuts me off before I can finish my sentence. "She did it," Kelly announces loudly and clearly, her voice carrying across the entire seating area. "She pushed the tray." The accusation hits me like a physical blow. "Seriously, no, I didn't," I say quietly, trying to keep my voice calm and reasonable. "The crate was stacked too close to the edge." "She's lying," Kelly snaps back, her voice getting louder and more dramatic with each word. "She's been acting weird all morning. You've seen the video, right? About her yelling in Arabic at that poor family?" The customer immediately pulls out his phone and starts filming me, zooming in on my face like I'm some kind of dangerous criminal. "Excuse me," I say, desperately trying to clean up the mess while being recorded. "Please, I need to explain what actually happened," but he doesn't stop recording. Instead, he zooms in on my hands, on my skin, on the sticky mess spreading across the floor, capturing every moment of my humiliation. "She's the girl from the video," someone behind him mutters to their companion. "The one who yelled at that poor woman yesterday." My throat clenches tight with panic and frustration. I look desperately at Veronica, hoping for some kind of backup or support from my manager, someone who was actually there and knows what really happened. But Veronica just stands there with her arms crossed, watching it all unfold like she's enjoying a particularly entertaining show. "Maya Chen," she says finally, her tone as sharp and cold as broken glass. "Back room, now." The walk to the back room feels like a walk through fire. Every eye in the terminal follows me as I make my way across the polished floors, judging me silently, condemning me based on a few seconds of edited footage and Kelly's theatrical performance. Not one single person asks for my side of the story or questions what they think they saw. Inside the storage room, the fluorescent lights buzz overhead with that harsh, institutional hum that makes everything feel cold and unwelcoming. The air conditioning prickles against my skin like tiny needles. Veronica doesn't sit down, and she doesn't offer me a seat either. This is meant to be an interrogation, not a conversation. "You've embarrassed this company," she starts immediately, not even bothering with pleasantries or giving me a chance to explain what happened. "I was helping someone," I reply as calmly as I can manage, trying to keep my voice steady and professional. Veronica holds up her hand sharply to silence me, like I'm a child who spoke out of turn. "We don't need martyrs here, Maya. We need consistency, quiet efficiency, and people who understand their role." "That video is fake," I say firmly, meeting her eyes directly. "It's been edited, it's misleading, and it doesn't show what actually happened." "It doesn't matter." Veronica steps closer to me, invading my personal space in a way that feels deliberately intimidating. "Perception is everything in this business. And right now, the perception is that you're a problem." I swallow hard, feeling my voice lowering with controlled anger. "You know I didn't do anything wrong yesterday. You were there. You saw what really happened." Veronica's voice drops even lower, taking on that cold, menacing tone that she uses when she really wants to hurt someone. "Let me make something crystal clear to you, Maya. You are here because we allowed you to be here. That clip on social media? It's not what ruined your image. You did that yourself." I stare at her directly, no longer trying to hide my growing anger. "Is this because I speak Arabic? Is that what this is really about?" "No," Veronica smiles. But it's the coldest, most cruel expression I've ever seen on her face. "It's because you keep forgetting who you are and what your place is in this organization." My hands curl into fists at my sides, and I have to force myself to keep them there instead of doing something I'd regret. "Effective immediately," Veronica continues, scribbling something on her clipboard with deliberate, exaggerated motions. "You are reassigned to waste management rotation. You'll be cleaning the employee break room, the back exits, and the northbound janitorial stations for the next 3 weeks." I don't blink, I don't move. I just stand there absorbing the full weight of what she's doing to me. "Do you want to file a complaint?" Veronica asks, and I can hear that she's almost laughing as she says it. "Go ahead, but remember this. I have HR in my pocket and I've been here for 15 years. And you? You have a TikTok scandal and no real title to protect you." I nod once, slowly, letting her words sink in completely. Then I turn around and walk out of that storage room without saying another word. I don't cry. Not until I'm safely hidden away in a supply closet near Gate 17, sitting on an overturned mop bucket with my arms wrapped tightly around myself. Only then do I let the tears come. The phone in my pocket buzzes with another email notification. I pull it out with shaking hands, and it's another rejection from another internal transfer request that I'd submitted months ago. 12 applications total over the years. All ignored, all marked under review, all eventually forgotten. I open an old folder in my photo gallery, the one I've labeled Proof. Inside are photos of my degree from Howard University, letters of recommendation from professors who believed in me, international certification documents that prove my fluency in multiple languages, and a picture of me with my sister Luna on the day I had to walk away from college to take care of her. I look at my reflection in the black screen of my phone, then make a decision. I press record. Not for TikTok, not for rage or revenge, but for memory, for truth, for the record. "My name is Maya Chen," I say into the camera, my voice shaking but clear. "I speak 6 languages fluently. I've worked at this airport for 6 years, and today I was punished for helping someone in need." I pause for a moment, gathering my strength. I won't disappear. Not again. The mop bucket creaks beneath me as I lean back against the cold concrete wall of the supply closet. My voice had been steady during the recording, but now the silence crashes over me like a massive wave, threatening to drown me in its weight. I pull out my phone again, but this time it's not for email or another job application. Instead, I navigate to a photo hidden deep in an old folder that I rarely open anymore. It's a picture of Luna when she was 10 years old, sitting in a hospital bed with a metal brace strapped to her spine. Despite everything she was going through, she's smiling in the photo, like she didn't know that the world had suddenly tilted against her, like she still believed everything would work out okay. I exhale slowly, the kind of deep breath that comes from remembering a completely different life, a time when everything seemed possible, and the future stretched out ahead of me like an open road. Back then, I wasn't a barista cleaning up other people's messes and swallowing my pride with every shift. I was a scholar. I made the dean's list every single semester. I was double majoring in linguistics and international relations, and I had professors who saw my potential and believed in my future. I had a full scholarship, a mentor who guided me, and an internship lined up with the State Department that would have launched my career into everything I'd ever dreamed of. Until one phone call shattered it all in an instant. Luna's accident changed everything. Our aunt couldn't take her in. She was too old and too overwhelmed by her own health problems. Our mother had passed away years before when we were still children. It was either me or foster care, and I couldn't let my little sister disappear into a system that might separate us forever. So I walked into my academic advisor's office that fall semester and said 5 words that changed the trajectory of my entire life. I need to withdraw immediately. No tears, no dramatic explanations, just a simple, impossible decision. You're too gifted to throw this away, my advisor had pleaded with me, showing me scholarship offers and graduate school opportunities that were already being discussed for my future. There has to be another way, but I didn't throw it away. I just postponed my dreams indefinitely, thinking it would only be for a semester or 2. But the world didn't wait for me to figure things out. 1 missed semester became 2. Then I needed a job to pay for Luna's medical bills. Then another job with better benefits. And before I knew it, airports had replaced embassies, aprons had replaced business suits, and my name had faded completely from the lists of rising stars in international relations. I had made peace with it, or at least I thought I had, until today. Now, after everything, after my hands had scrubbed the same tiles for years while my resume gathered dust in a locked drawer, after I'd smiled politely while being treated like I was invisible, someone had dared to film me, edit me, and reduce me to a 38-second lie. And still, no one had asked about the girl I gave it all up for. I wiped my eyes, then wiped the screen of my phone clean. I'm not ashamed of the choices I made or the sacrifices I endured. But if they're going to drag my name through the dirt and destroy my reputation with lies, I'll make sure they choke on the truth that's buried beneath all their assumptions. What I don't know, what I couldn't possibly imagine, is that just 2 terminals down from where I'm sitting, David Rivera is standing at the edge of a boarding gate with his phone pressed to his ear, talking urgently to a young associate. "She's here," he says firmly into the phone. "Gate 27, just like I thought. We need to speak to her today, before this situation gets any worse and before she disappears completely." The hallway outside Gate 27 feels colder than usual as I push the yellow mop bucket forward slowly across the polished floor. My back aches from hours of bending over toilets and sinks, and my fingers are raw and red from the harsh cleaning chemicals. The citrusy smell of industrial-strength ammonia clings to my skin and hair like a second punishment layered on top of the humiliation of being demoted. I've spent the last 4 hours cleaning staff restrooms and employee break rooms, scrubbing away coffee stains and wiping down surfaces that other people take for granted. Meanwhile, Kelly is somewhere near the departure gates, laughing with her friends and customers, her record completely clean and her perfectly timed smile still intact. Veronica hasn't looked at me even once all day. Not since the reassignment, not since the meeting in the storage room, not since the viral video spread through staff group chats like poison, turning me into the villain of a story that no one bothered to fact-check. I'm just finishing rinsing out the last mop head in the janitorial sink when I hear it behind me. A low rustle of keys and heavy boots on concrete. It's one of the janitors, an older man with dark brown skin and a salt and pepper beard. He's part of the overnight crew, always quiet, always invisible in the same way that I've been invisible for years. He nods at my mop bucket, then glances at the patch of citrus-slick floor between us where I've been working. "Smells like bullshit," he mutters quietly, and I'm so surprised by his words that I look up sharply. I blink in confusion. "What?" The man doesn't smile, just goes back to wringing out his own mop with practiced efficiency. But then, as he passes by me, he pauses and speaks without looking directly at me. "Used to be a school teacher," he says, his eyes still focused on the dirty water swirling in his bucket. Before my accent got in the way of what they wanted their faculty to look like. "What?" I ask again, this time with genuine surprise in my voice. The man shrugs casually like he's talking about the weather. Didn't fit the image they wanted to project to parents and the school board, so I started scrubbing floors for people who couldn't spell half the words I used to teach to their children. Silence stretches between us, thick and heavy like the ammonia fumes and the weight of shared experience and mutual understanding. Then he adds quietly, "Don't let them tell you who you are, especially the ones who can't do what you do." I open my mouth to respond, to say something meaningful or grateful, but he's already walking away down the hallway, his keys jingling like a warning bell with each step. At the end of the hallway, he stops and looks back over his shoulder at me. "You got something special," he says simply. "I saw it yesterday with that family, and they saw it too. That's exactly why they're scared of you." Then he disappears around the corner, leaving me standing alone with my mop and bucket, but somehow feeling less alone than I have in weeks. I stand frozen for a long moment, my hands still dripping with bleach water, processing what just happened. No one had spoken to me like that in weeks, not with pity or condescension, but with recognition, with respect, with the understanding that comes from someone who has walked a similar path. I don't even know his name, but in that brief moment it doesn't matter. Someone had seen me, not for the uniform I wear, not for the viral video that's destroying my reputation, but for the thing that still burns inside me and refuses to die no matter how hard they try to extinguish it. I haven't spoken a single word to anyone since my shift began this morning, but my mind is loud and racing with thoughts and possibilities. They want me to break. They want me to be silent, obedient, ashamed, and grateful for whatever scraps they're willing to throw my way. Instead, I keep scrubbing, but now there's something different in the way I move. Something that feels like purpose instead of just going through the motions. But while I'm in this hallway having my moment of clarity, the world outside is already burning in ways I can't imagine. It had started at exactly 2:14 a.m. with a TikTok account that had been created just hours before. The profile had no real followers, no previous posts, and no identifiable face or name attached to it. Someone had posted a 12-second clip with the carefully chosen title, "The Barista Who Thinks She's a Diplomat." The footage opens mid-sentence, showing my voice raised in Arabic, calm but firm as I helped the distressed family. But there's no context provided, no setup that explains the emergency situation, and no indication of the urgency that had prompted my intervention. Just my voice speaking a foreign language with bold white subtitles that were complete and deliberate lies. The fake subtitles read, "Move or I'll get security. You're holding up real passengers and this isn't your country." None of it was real. Not a single word of those translations was accurate. The Arabic I had actually used was gentle, reassuring, and professional. The kind of language you use to calm someone down and help them navigate a crisis. But the video had been skillfully altered, with the tone artificially adjusted, natural pauses edited out, and fake subtitles added in just the right spots to completely twist the message and make me look like a racist, power-hungry employee, abusing my position. Even worse, someone had dubbed dramatic, thumping music underneath the entire clip. The kind of ominous beat you'd expect to hear in a movie when the villain is revealed. It made me sound and look like I was the problem, like I was the threat that needed to be stopped. The clip exploded across social media platforms like wildfire. 20,000 views in the first 2 hours, then it kept climbing. Soon, a reaction video appeared. A blonde influencer in expensive athleisure wear, whispering dramatically to her camera, "Am I the only one who thinks she's completely unhinged? Like, who does she think she is?" Then the comment storms began in earnest. Another angry black woman who can't control herself. These people always play the victim when they get called out. I bet she doesn't even really speak Arabic, probably just making sounds to intimidate people. By morning, the clip had been picked up by travel blog horror story compilations, airport complaint websites, and a Reddit thread specifically dedicated to entitled staff stories. The video was spreading faster than any fact-checking could keep up with. I don't know any of this yet. I'm still scrubbing staff toilets in the janitorial corridor, completely unaware that my image is flashing across millions of screens around the world, weaponized without my consent by people who have never met me and don't care about the truth. Kelly knows, though. She's been watching the video behind the espresso machine, her eyes wide with what looks like excitement rather than concern. She keeps her phone tilted carefully away from view whenever I happen to walk past, but I can see the satisfied smirk on her face when she thinks no one is looking. Veronica has seen it too, but she says nothing directly. She just smirks whenever her staff members forward the video in their private group chats, accompanied by eye-roll gifs and face-palm emojis. The silence from management is deafening. No one asks for my side of the story. No one bothers to check the source or verify the context of the footage. In a world that's completely obsessed with going viral and getting clicks, the truth is simply too slow and too complicated to matter. People want their outrage served fast and simple, and nuance doesn't get retweets. And me? I'm about to walk directly into a storm that I didn't start, didn't contribute to, and that everyone around me has already decided I deserved, regardless of what actually happened. I'm rinsing out a gray mop head in the industrial sink behind the north exit, my hands moving mechanically through the routine I've done hundreds of times before, when I hear the knock. It isn't a loud, aggressive bang like you'd expect from security or management. Just three sharp, deliberate taps that somehow cut through all the background noise of the terminal. I turn slowly, water still dripping from my hands, and see a man standing in the doorway of the janitorial corridor. He's dressed casually, but there's something about his posture that suggests confidence and authority. He looks calm and collected, but there's a stillness in his expression that doesn't match the constant bustle and chaos of the airport around us. He's clearly not in uniform, and he doesn't look like management either. But I can feel it instantly, radiating from him like heat. This man has power, real power, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself or demand respect. "Are you Maya Chen?" he asks, his voice steady and direct. My eyes narrow slightly as I study his face, trying to place him. "Who's asking?" He steps forward into the hallway, and his voice drops to a more conversational level. "David Rivera." The name hits me like a physical shock. For a moment, silence hangs between us, but it's not blank or empty silence. It's the kind of loaded pause that happens when memories suddenly rush back from places you thought you'd forgotten. I blink hard, trying to process what I'm hearing. "Wait, the filmmaker? David Rivera who made Nations Between Us?" His lips curl into a half smile, and he nods slowly. "You remember my work?" "Of course I remember," I say, my voice filled with genuine surprise and something that might be admiration. "Your film about cultural bridges in conflict zones. It was incredible. It changed how I thought about translation as a tool for peace." He nods again, then pauses, and his next words completely floor me. "And I remember you." My arms tense up immediately, and I grip the edge of the metal sink harder. "I've never met you before," I say slowly, confusion and wariness creeping into my voice. "Not since Barcelona," he replies, and those three words stop me cold. My breath catches in my chest as a memory I haven't thought about in years suddenly comes flooding back in vivid detail. "I was 19 years old," David continues, his voice taking on the tone of someone sharing a story that's been important to him for a long time. "Lost and completely panicked at Sant Station. I had no idea how to get to the airport transfer train. My Spanish was absolutely terrible, and I was going to miss my flight home." I stare at him as the pieces start falling into place, my heart beginning to race. Everyone I tried to ask for help just ignored me or waved me away, until this girl appeared out of nowhere. She was younger than me, but she was so calm and confident. She helped me find the right platform, made sure I understood the directions, and when I tried to thank her, she said, "De nada, cuídate," like she was giving me a lifeline. I feel my throat tighten with emotion as I whisper, "I remember you. You had a torn backpack," I continue, the details coming back to me now. "And you didn't have a phone charger. You looked like you hadn't slept in days, and you were carrying this beat-up guidebook with half the pages falling out." He laughs quietly, and there's genuine warmth in the sound. I hadn't slept. I'd been traveling for 36 hours straight. We both stand there in the quiet hum of the janitorial corridor. Two people whose lives had intersected briefly 12 years ago and then twisted apart, only to find themselves unexpectedly aligned again in the most unlikely of places. "You remembered me?" I finally ask, still struggling to believe what I'm hearing. "After all this time?" "I remembered your voice," David says simply. "And when I heard it again yesterday, speaking Arabic with that same gentle authority, I knew it was you." I shake my head in complete disbelief. 12 years later, and you recognized me from one sentence?" "It wasn't just the words," he explains, his expression growing more serious. "It was the way you said them. Like you didn't just speak Spanish, you understood people. You saw what they needed, and you gave it to them without thinking twice about it." My throat tightens with emotion as the weight of what he's saying sinks in. I look away from his intense gaze, suddenly feeling overwhelmed by this unexpected connection to my past. "You're scrubbing floors," he says quietly, and there's no judgment in his voice, just a kind of profound sadness and confusion. "Why?" he asks simply. I don't answer immediately. Instead, I wipe my hands slowly on my stained apron, gathering my thoughts and my courage. When I finally face him directly, my voice is steady but filled with years of frustration and disappointment. "Because I left school to take care of my sister when she had a spinal injury," I begin. "Because I applied for every translation and cultural liaison job at this airport for 4 years straight. Because HR never called me back, not once. Because Veronica, my manager, somehow lost my application file every single time I submitted it. Because Kelly, my coworker, has sabotaged me repeatedly and still managed to get promoted over me. David's jaw tightens visibly as he listens to my litany of obstacles and rejections. And because, I add, my voice growing stronger and more defiant with each word, when you're a black woman with ambition working in a uniform, that ambition becomes a threat to people who can't imagine you as anything more than what they see on the surface. He doesn't interrupt me or try to offer empty reassurances. He just listens. I'm not ashamed of working, I continue, needing him to understand this completely. I'm not ashamed of the jobs I've done or the sacrifices I've made, but I'm sick and tired of being erased, of being ignored, of having my potential buried under other people's assumptions about who I'm supposed to be. There's silence again, but this time it's not empty. It's weighted with understanding, like something fundamental has just shifted between us and in the air around us. David reaches into his coat and pulls out a slim black folder, holding it carefully like it contains something precious. I'm not here to pity you, he says firmly, his voice taking on a professional tone. I'm here because I'm building something important. A documentary series, 6 parts, focusing on the invisible workforce in America. People like you, multilingual, brilliant, systematically overlooked and undervalued. He hands me the folder, and I take it with trembling fingers. Inside is a detailed project proposal, a film crew itinerary with dates and locations, and at the bottom of the page, under a section labeled Potential Cultural Consultant, I see something that makes my heart skip a beat. Maya Chen. I look up at him, startled and confused. You already put my name here? Before you even found me? He shrugs casually, like it's the most obvious thing in the world. I hoped I wasn't wrong about you. My fingers brush the page where my name is printed in clean, professional typography. I don't want charity, I say firmly, needing to establish that boundary immediately. You wouldn't last a single day in my world if that's what this was, he says evenly. And there's a hint of steel in his voice now. I need you because you're better at this than anyone I've met in years. Because yesterday you translated a human crisis in a matter of seconds. And because I think you deserve to have the microphone for once instead of being silenced. I exhale slowly, my voice cracking slightly with emotion. I don't even know if I still belong in that world. It's been so long since I've used my education for anything meaningful. David leans forward slightly, his eyes intense and serious. Then let me remind you who you really are. Just then, the sound of footsteps echoes behind us in the hallway. Veronica appears at the entrance to the janitorial area, and she freezes completely when she sees us together. Her face goes pale, and I can see the wheels turning in her head as she tries to process what she's witnessing. Mr. Rivera, she asks, her voice suddenly high-pitched and artificially sweet. I didn't know you were visiting our facility today. I asked to speak to Ms. Chen. David cuts in smoothly, his tone professional but with an underlying authority that makes it clear he's not asking for permission. Privately, Veronica's practiced smile twitches and falters. She's currently on janitorial duty. There must be some kind of mistake or misunderstanding. No, David replies firmly, his voice cutting through her excuses like a blade. The mistake was yours and it's over. He turns back to me, ignoring Veronica completely. If you want in, you have 48 hours to decide. We fly to DC on Thursday. You'll be consulting and co-directing the project. Co-directing? Veronica sputters, unable to hide her shock and dismay. She speaks 6 languages fluently, David says flatly, turning to look at Veronica with barely concealed contempt. What do you speak? Veronica opens her mouth, then closes it again, unable to come up with a response that won't make her look even more foolish. She storms off without another word, her red heels clicking angrily against the floor. I stand there long after she's gone, my breath shallow and my eyes wide, trying to process everything that just happened. David offers one final piece of advice before he leaves. Say yes, and say it loud enough for everyone to hear. Then he turns and walks out, leaving me alone in the hallway with the folder clutched in my hands. I stand there long after the door closes, my fingers still holding the folder like it's a lifeline, my heart pounding like it wants to break free from my chest and scream with joy. But my voice, when it finally comes, stays low and steady. Maya Salama, I whisper again to myself. Go in peace. This time, though, I'm not saying goodbye. I'm saying hello to the future I thought I'd lost forever. It had started at exactly 2:14 a.m. with a TikTok account that had been created just hours before. The profile had no real followers, no previous posts, and no identifiable face or name attached to it. Someone had posted a 12-second clip with the carefully chosen title, The Barista Who Thinks She's a Diplomat. The footage opens mid-sentence, showing my voice raised in Arabic, calm but firm, as I helped the distressed family. But there's no context provided, no setup that explains the emergency situation. and no indication of the urgency that had prompted my intervention. Just my voice speaking a foreign language with bold white subtitles that were complete and deliberate lies. The fake subtitles read, "Move or I'll get security. You're holding up real passengers. And this isn't your country." None of it was real. Not a single word of those translations was accurate. The Arabic I had actually used was gentle, reassuring, and professional. The kind of language you use to calm someone down and help them navigate a crisis. But the video had been skillfully altered, with the tone artificially adjusted, natural pauses edited out, and fake subtitles added in just the right spots to completely twist the message and make me look like a racist, power-hungry employee abusing my position. Even worse, someone had dubbed dramatic thumping music underneath the entire clip, the kind of ominous beat you'd expect to hear in a movie when the villain is revealed. It made me sound and look like I was the problem, like I was the threat that needed to be stopped. The clip exploded across social media platforms like wildfire. 20,000 views in the first 2 hours, then it kept climbing. Soon, a reaction video appeared. A blonde influencer in expensive athleisure wear, whispering dramatically to her camera, "Am I the only one who thinks she's completely unhinged? Like, who does she think she is?" Then the comment storms began in earnest. Another angry black woman who can't control herself. These people always play the victim when they get called out. I bet she doesn't even really speak Arabic, probably just making sounds to intimidate people. By morning, the clip had been picked up by travel blog horror story compilations, airport complaint websites, and a Reddit thread specifically dedicated to entitled staff stories. The video was spreading faster than any fact-checking could keep up with. I don't know any of this yet. I'm still scrubbing staff toilets in the janitorial corridor, completely unaware that my image is flashing across millions of screens around the world, weaponized without my consent by people who have never met me and don't care about the truth. Kelly knows, though. She's been watching the video behind the espresso machine, her eyes wide with what looks like excitement rather than concern. She keeps her phone tilted carefully away from a view whenever I happen to walk past, but I can see the satisfied smirk on her face when she thinks no one is looking. Veronica has seen it too, but she says nothing directly. She just smirks whenever her staff members forward the video in their private group chats, accompanied by eye-roll gifs and facepalm emojis. The silence from management is deafening. No one asks for my side of the story. No one bothers to check the source or verify the context of the footage. In a world that's completely obsessed with going viral and getting clicks, the truth is simply too slow and too complicated to matter. People want their outrage served fast and simple, and nuance doesn't get retweets. And me? I'm about to walk directly into a storm that I didn't start, didn't contribute to, and that everyone around me has already decided I deserved, regardless of what actually happened. I'm rinsing out a gray mop head in the industrial sink behind the north exit, my hands moving mechanically through the routine I've done hundreds of times before when I hear the knock. It isn't a loud, aggressive bang like you'd expect from security or management. Just 3 sharp, deliberate taps that somehow cut through all the background noise of the terminal. I turn slowly, water still dripping from my hands, and see a man standing in the doorway of the janitorial corridor. He's dressed casually, but there's something about his posture that suggests confidence and authority. He looks calm and collected, but there's a stillness in his expression that doesn't match the constant bustle and chaos of the airport around us. He's clearly not in uniform, and he doesn't look like management either. But I can feel it instantly, radiating from him like heat. This man has power, real power, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself or demand respect. "Are you Maya Chen?" he asks, his voice steady and direct. My eyes narrow slightly as I study his face, trying to place him. "Who's asking?" He steps forward into the hallway, and his voice drops to a more conversational level. "David Rivera." The name hits me like a physical shock. For a moment, silence hangs between us, but it's not blank or empty silence. It's the kind of loaded pause that happens when memories suddenly rush back from places you thought you'd forgotten. I blink hard, trying to process what I'm hearing. Wait, the filmmaker? David Rivera, who made Nations Between Us? His lips curl into a half smile, and he nods slowly. "You remember my work?" "Of course I remember," I say, my voice filled with genuine surprise and something that might be admiration. "Your film about cultural bridges in conflict zones. It was incredible. It changed how I thought about translation as a tool for peace." He nods again, then pauses, and his next words completely floor me. "And I remember you." My arms tense up immediately, and I grip the edge of the metal sink harder. "I've never met you before," I say slowly, confusion and wariness creeping into my voice. Not since Barcelona, he replies, and those 3 words stop me cold. My breath catches in my chest as a memory I haven't thought about in years suddenly comes flooding back in vivid detail. I was 19 years old, David continues, his voice taking on the tone of someone sharing a story that's been important to him for a long time. Lost and completely panicked at Sant Station. I had no idea how to get to the airport transfer train. My Spanish was absolutely terrible, and I was going to miss my flight home. I stare at him as the pieces start falling into place, my heart beginning to race. Everyone I tried to ask for help just ignored me or waved me away, until this girl appeared out of nowhere. She was younger than me, but she was so calm and confident. She helped me find the right platform, made sure I understood the directions, and when I tried to thank her, she said, "De nada, cuídate," like she was giving me a lifeline. I feel my throat tighten with emotion as I whisper, "I remember you. You had a torn backpack," I continue, the details coming back to me now. "And you didn't have a phone charger. You looked like you hadn't slept in days and you were carrying this beat-up guidebook with half the pages falling out." He laughs quietly, and there's genuine warmth in the sound. I hadn't slept. I'd been traveling for 36 hours straight. We both stand there in the quiet hum of the janitorial corridor. 2 people whose lives had intersected briefly 12 years ago, and then twisted apart, only to find themselves unexpectedly aligned again in the most unlikely of places. "You remembered me?" I finally ask, still struggling to believe what I'm hearing. "After all this time?" "I remembered your voice," David says simply. "And when I heard it again yesterday, speaking Arabic with that same gentle authority, I knew it was you." I shake my head in complete disbelief. 12 years later, and you recognized me from one sentence? "It wasn't just the words," he explains, his expression growing more serious. "It was the way you said them. Like you didn't just speak Spanish, you understood people. You saw what they needed, and you gave it to them without thinking twice about it." My throat tightens with emotion as the weight of what he's saying sinks in. I look away from his intense gaze, suddenly feeling overwhelmed by this unexpected connection to my past. "You're scrubbing floors," he says quietly, and there's no judgment in his voice, just a kind of profound sadness and confusion. "Why?" he asks simply. I don't answer immediately. Instead, I wipe my hands slowly on my stained apron, gathering my thoughts and my courage. When I finally face him directly, my voice is steady but filled with years of frustration and disappointment. "Because I left school to take care of my sister when she had a spinal injury," I begin. "Because I applied for every translation and cultural liaison job at this airport for 4 years straight. Because HR never called me back, not once. Because Veronica, my manager, somehow lost my application file every single time I submitted it. Because Kelly, my coworker, has sabotaged me repeatedly and still managed to get promoted over me." David's jaw tightens visibly as he listens to my litany of obstacles and rejections. "And because," I add, my voice growing stronger and more defiant with each word, "when you're a black woman with ambition working in a uniform, that ambition becomes a threat to people who can't imagine you as anything more than what they see on the surface." He doesn't interrupt me or try to offer empty reassurances. He just listens. "I'm not ashamed of working," I continue, needing him to understand this completely. "I'm not ashamed of the jobs I've done or the sacrifices I've made. But I'm sick and tired of being erased, of being ignored, of having my potential buried under other people's assumptions about who I'm supposed to be." There's silence again, but this time it's not empty. It's weighted with understanding, like something fundamental has just shifted between us and in the air around us. David reaches into his coat and pulls out a slim black folder, holding it carefully like it contains something precious. "I'm not here to pity you," he says firmly, his voice taking on a professional tone. "I'm here because I'm building something important. A documentary series, 6 parts, focusing on the invisible workforce in America. People like you, multilingual, brilliant, systematically overlooked and undervalued." He hands me the folder, and I take it with trembling fingers. Inside is a detailed project proposal, a film crew itinerary with dates and locations, and at the bottom of the page, under a section labeled Potential Cultural Consultant, I see something that makes my heart skip a beat. Maya Chen. I look up at him, startled and confused. "You already put my name here? Before you even found me?" He shrugs casually, like it's the most obvious thing in the world. "I hoped I wasn't wrong about you." My fingers brush the page where my name is printed in clean, professional typography. "I don't want charity," I say firmly, needing to establish that boundary immediately. "You wouldn't last a single day in my world if that's what this was," he says evenly. And there's a hint of steel in his voice now. "I need you because you're better at this than anyone I've met in years. Because yesterday you translated a human crisis in a matter of seconds. And because I think you deserve to have the microphone for once instead of being silenced. I exhale slowly, my voice cracking slightly with emotion. I don't even know if I still belong in that world. It's been so long since I've used my education for anything meaningful. David leans forward slightly, his eyes intense and serious. Then let me remind you who you really are. Just then, the sound of footsteps echoes behind us in the hallway. Veronica appears at the entrance to the janitorial area, and she freezes completely when she sees us together. Her face goes pale, and I can see the wheels turning in her head as she tries to process what she's witnessing. "Mr. Rivera," she asks, her voice suddenly high-pitched and artificially sweet. "I didn't know you were visiting our facility today. I asked to speak to Ms. Chen." David cuts in smoothly, his tone professional, but with an underlying authority that makes it clear he's not asking for permission. Privately, Veronica's practiced smile twitches and falters. "She's currently on janitorial duty. There must be some kind of mistake or misunderstanding." "No," David replies firmly, his voice cutting through her excuses like a blade. "The mistake was yours and it's over." He turns back to me, ignoring Veronica completely. "If you want in, you have 48 hours to decide. We fly to DC on Thursday. You'll be consulting and co-directing the project." "Co-directing?" Veronica sputters, unable to hide her shock and dismay. "She speaks 6 languages fluently," David says flatly, turning to look at Veronica with barely concealed contempt. "What do you speak?" Veronica opens her mouth, then closes it again, unable to come up with a response that won't make her look even more foolish. She storms off without another word, her red heels clicking angrily against the floor. I stand there long after she's gone, my breath shallow and my eyes wide, trying to process everything that just happened. David offers one final piece of advice before he leaves. "Say yes, and say it loud enough for everyone to hear." Then he turns and walks out, leaving me alone in the hallway with the folder clutched in my hands. I stand there long after the door closes, my fingers still holding the folder like it's a lifeline, my heart pounding like it wants to break free from my chest and scream with joy. But my voice, when it finally comes, stays low and steady. "Ma-as-salama," I whisper again to myself. "Go in peace." This time, though, I'm not saying goodbye. I'm saying hello to the future I thought I'd lost forever. The conference room on level 3 isn't particularly grand or impressive, but it smells like power in a way that's unmistakable. It's the kind of space where deals are made in whispers, where reputations are built and destroyed in seconds, where the real decisions about people's lives and careers happen behind closed doors. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook the tarmac below, and the constant hum of distant jet engines underscores every word spoken inside these walls. I've never stepped foot in this part of the airport before. This is executive territory, a world away from the coffee-stained counters and mop buckets that have defined my existence for the past 6 years. Now I stand at the center of it all, and I'm not wearing my apron or carrying cleaning supplies. Instead, I'm dressed in a pressed navy blouse and slacks that don't smell like bleach or industrial cleaner. Around my neck hangs a lanyard that reads Cultural Consultant and Documentary Access Level 3 in crisp official lettering. I hold the folder David gave me tightly, like armor against whatever's about to happen in this room. I can feel that this meeting won't end with simple applause or congratulations. There are too many powerful people involved, too many egos at stake, and too much money on the line for this to go smoothly. Across from me sit 6 people around a polished conference table: producers, coordinators, brand representatives, and executives. Most of them are white, most of them haven't looked at me for more than 2 seconds at a time since I entered the room. And all of them except one seem to be treating me like an interesting but temporary distraction. The exception is Diana. She sits with her legs crossed elegantly, her hair perfectly styled, wearing a blazer that probably costs more than I make in 2 months. She tilts her head as she studies me, smiling like a predator who has just caught the scent of blood. Diana is the brand director of the documentary series. And as I'll learn shortly, she's also David's ex-girlfriend. This detail explains a lot about the tension I can feel crackling in the air around her. She flips through some papers with deliberate casualness, then looks up with that calculated smile still playing at the corners of her mouth. "I must have missed the memo," Diana says, in a voice like silk wrapped around steel. "Are we taking on interns now?" A few people around the table chuckle quietly, and I can feel them waiting to see how I'll respond to this obvious attempt to diminish me. I don't laugh. Instead, I place my folder on the table and open it with quiet, intentional movements. "No," I say clearly, my voice carrying across the room with perfect pronunciation and absolute confidence. I'm here because David requested a cultural advisor with direct multilingual field experience. 6 years working in an international transit zone, 6 languages spoken fluently, and zero tolerance for PR disasters caused by bad translation work. Diana blinks once, clearly not expecting me to respond with such directness and authority. A beat passes while she processes this, and then her smile widens in a way that doesn't reach her eyes. Of course, she says with exaggerated sweetness. I'm sure you've done some absolutely fascinating latte art in your time here. My jaw tightens, but before I can respond, David walks into the room. He doesn't speak immediately, doesn't sit down or offer pleasantries. He just looks around the room and says one word. Begin. One of the producers clears his throat nervously and opens a thick binder. We're building episode 2 around themes of miscommunication in transit hubs. The goal is to capture real human moments, high stress, cross-cultural interactions, vulnerable situations where language barriers create genuine problems. He pauses and glances at me with what might be respect, which is why we appreciate having your insights and expertise on the team. I nod calmly, then lean forward slightly. Then may I ask who's been reviewing your Arabic translations for the segments you've already filmed? Diana lifts one manicured hand dismissively. We've already contracted with a professional vendor for all translation services. I turn to a highlighted page in my folder and pull out a copy of their draft script. The margins are covered with red ink where I've marked phrases that have been mistranslated from English, some of them dangerously and offensively so. This line here, I say, pointing to a specific section, translates in most Arabic dialects as, "You people caused delays." In certain regional contexts, it reads as a racial slur. Complete silence falls over the room. I flip to another page that I've prepared. And this phrase here implies that the passenger isn't intelligent enough to read basic instructions, which violates ADA standards and basic human decency. David doesn't even blink, but I can see Diana shifting uncomfortably in her chair. I'm sure that's subjective, Diana says tightly, her voice losing some of its earlier confidence. I confirmed these translations with 2 regional experts, I reply matter-of-factly, and I ran the phrases through 3 different cultural vetting systems to verify the problems. I look up and meet every eye in the room, one by one. I'm not here to be nice or to make anyone comfortable. I'm here to keep this project from collapsing under the weight of its own ego and ignorance. A long, tense pause fills the conference room as my words sink in. Then David speaks, his voice cutting through the silence with absolute authority. Keep her on everything from this point forward. Every script, every translation, every cultural reference gets reviewed by Maya before it goes to production. Diana's voice slices through the air like a blade. With all due respect, David, no, he says firmly, cutting her off mid-sentence. You're the one who pushed for that vendor without proper vetting. You're the one who greenlit copy that could have destroyed our credibility. She's the one who just saved us from offending half a continent and potentially facing lawsuits. I stand perfectly still, not triumphant or smug, just grounded in the knowledge that this moment isn't about luck or connections. This is what I was trained to do, what I've always been capable of doing. I just never had the platform or the recognition to prove it before. Diana leans back in her expensive chair, and I can see her carefully constructed mask beginning to crack around the edges. Well, we'll need to review her background thoroughly, of course, she mutters, scrambling to regain some control over the situation. Verify her credentials, check her experience, see what formal titles and certifications she actually has. I meet her gaze directly, my voice steady and clear. Howard University, Linguistics, Class of 2017. Certified Arabic English Interpreter through the American Translators Association. Mandarin Fluency Certified through the Beijing Immersion Program, 2018. 2 peer-reviewed academic essays published in the Journal of Cross-Cultural Communication. I take a deliberate breath before continuing. 1 essay on gendered miscommunication patterns in international transit zones, and another on how qualified Black women are systematically denied positions in cross-cultural institutions despite consistently outperforming their peers in live simulation testing. The room goes completely, utterly still. You could hear a pin drop on the carpeted floor. David leans forward slightly, and I catch what might be the hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Anyone else want to test her credentials or question her qualifications? But outside this boardroom, while I'm proving my worth and establishing my expertise, someone is already laying the groundwork for the next attack on my reputation. Diana sits in her glass corner office later that evening, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice a silk thread pulled taut with barely contained fury. "No, don't post it under the company account," she says quietly into the phone. "Use the side blog. The one we keep for industry gossip and insider information. She pauses, listening to whoever is on the other end, then continues with cold precision. Title it something like, From Latte to Liar. The consultant raising eyebrows behind the scenes. Make it sound concerned rather than accusatory. Her smile is completely without warmth as she gives her final instructions. The article goes live within the hour, just as I'm finally heading home after the longest and most emotionally exhausting day of my life. It's published anonymously, but the writing is precise and calculated in its tone. The piece questions my rapid rise from barista to consultant, calls the transition suspicious and unprecedented. It claims that unnamed sources have witnessed me bullying my way into the consultant position, questions whether my degree is legitimate, and even hints that I'm weaponizing racial sensitivity to silence legitimate criticism of my work. The blog isn't mainstream or widely read, but it doesn't need to be. In the interconnected world of social media, it spreads like oil on water. 3 reposts, then 7, then 40. By the next morning, David's inbox is flooded with half-concerned, half-panicked messages from sponsors and partners who are suddenly worried about the controversy surrounding their new cultural consultant. But when I walk into the glass atrium of the executive offices the next morning, I move like someone who knows the ground isn't shifting beneath her feet anymore. I'm not the same person who was scrubbing toilets and swallowing insults just 48 hours ago. David meets me at the elevator, his face grim as he shows me the article on his phone screen. For 1 second, my eyes narrow as I read the headline and skim the accusations. Then I reach into my leather binder and pull out a folder that's even thicker than the one I brought to yesterday's meeting. Good, I say calmly, my voice steady as steel. Let's answer every single one of their questions. Inside my folder are my original university transcripts, printed on official letterhead with raised seals and watermarks that can't be faked. There's a certified degree copy directly from Howard University's registrar office, complete with verification codes. I have the letter from the Beijing Immersion Program Director, written on university stationery and signed with his official stamp. There are my test results from the UN Interpreters Evaluation Panel, showing scores in the 95th percentile across all 6 languages. Even more impressive are copies of the 2 peer-reviewed articles I mentioned, complete with DOI numbers, faculty endorsements, and citations from other researchers who have referenced my work in their own studies. David flips through each page methodically, his face unreadable and professional as he examines every document. Then, finally, he smirks. "She thought she could question your credentials," he says, shaking his head in disbelief. My voice doesn't rise or become emotional. She thought the lie would spread faster than the truth. People usually believe what they want to believe, especially when it confirms their existing biases. I pause for a moment, then add with quiet confidence, "But I've been keeping receipts for years." He hands the entire folder to his assistant, a sharp-eyed woman who's been watching this unfold with growing amazement. "Upload every single page to our press portal," David instructs her. "Send copies to PR, legal, and the sponsors. Caption it, 'Credentials, not charisma.' The documentation speaks for itself." Within hours, the anonymous blog is forced to issue a humiliating retraction. But the damage from their attack has already reversed and backfired spectacularly. Because I didn't just survive their hit piece, I obliterated it with precision and overwhelming evidence. Now everyone watching this controversy knows with absolute certainty that I wasn't lucky or connected or playing some kind of angle. I was legitimate, qualified, and had been systematically overlooked for years, despite having credentials that surpassed most people already working in the field. I close my folder and stand up from the conference table. "I have prep work to do for our Cairo segment interviews," I say matter-of-factly. "If we're finished here," I turn and walk toward the door, and every eye in the room follows me down the hallway. My breath finally catches up to my racing heart. My fingers tremble slightly from the adrenaline, but my spine stays perfectly straight as I move. I don't hear the footsteps behind me until I reach the elevator bank. It's Diana, and her voice drops to a low, venomous whisper. "You don't belong in that room," she hisses, stepping close enough that I can smell her expensive perfume mixed with the sharp scent of desperation. I don't turn around to face her. "I earned it," I say simply, my voice calm and factual. Diana laughs, but there's no humor in the sound, only bitterness and barely contained rage. "You're still just a charity case in expensive clothes. He'll get bored with you, or you'll make a mistake, and when you do, I'll be right there waiting." I turn to face her then, meeting her gaze directly with steady eyes. "Then I won't make a mistake?" I say quietly. The elevator doors open with a soft chime. I step inside alone and allow myself a small, satisfied smile as the doors close between us. The air inside the airport cafe feels too still and oppressive for 6 a.m. the next morning. I can sense the wrongness even before I push open the side door marked "Staff Only." It's a strange, unnatural hush that hovers above the regular clatter and noise of the morning shift, like everyone is holding their breath and waiting for something to happen. The baristas whisper behind the counter in hushed, urgent tones. One cashier completely avoids making eye contact with me when I walk past. The espresso machine steams and hisses like it's trying to fill the uncomfortable silence, but it can't drown out what I already know in my gut. Something is very, very wrong. Then I see the screen above the pastry display shelf. The local news feed flickers with a familiar image. My face, frozen mid-sentence from footage taken during the staff meeting yesterday. The image is now paired with a new, sensationalized headline. From coffee girl to consultant, social media, darling or dangerous hype. Someone had leaked the internal footage. The private meeting, my pointed comments about institutional racism, the boldness with which I had called out Diana's incompetence. All of it was now public, taken out of context, and being used to paint me as some kind of opportunistic troublemaker. Underneath the video, a conveniently anonymous source claims that I had grossly exaggerated my credentials, manipulated my way into David's favor through emotional manipulation, and weaponized racial sympathy to gain access to opportunities I didn't deserve. The article is unsigned, of course, but the fingerprints are as obvious as if Diana had signed her name in blood. Veronica's voice rings out behind me before I even have a chance to process what I'm seeing. Well, well, look who's back. The celebrity herself. I turn slowly, keeping my shoulders square and my expression neutral. Veronica leans against the counter with her arms folded across her chest, wearing a smile that could cut glass. Must be nice having powerful people fight your battles for you, she says, with fake sweetness dripping from every word. I step forward, my voice steady and professional despite the hostile energy crackling around me. Is there something you need from me this morning, Veronica? I need you to understand something very clearly, Veronica says, her tone shifting from fake sweetness to something much colder and more dangerous. Some of us had to work for years, for decades, to get into these corporate rooms and boardroom meetings. We didn't just show up with a sob story and a pretty accent, expecting everything to be handed to us. My voice stays low and controlled. I worked 6 years in this airport, in silence, with grace, while being consistently overlooked and undervalued. And while you kept my resume buried at the bottom of a drawer, collecting dust, Veronica laughs and the sound is sharp and cruel. You were never going to get that promotion or transfer, Maya. You don't fit our image, and you never did. My stomach knots with anger, but I don't let it show on my face. Instead, I keep my expression neutral and wait for her to continue digging her own grave. Veronica leans closer, lowering her voice to what she probably thinks is a threatening whisper. You don't get to rewrite the rules of how things work around here just because you had one lucky moment that got you noticed. My phone buzzes insistently in my hand, and I step back to check it. There's a message from David that makes my heart skip. Meet me in conference room 2A, urgent. I look back at Veronica one final time, then simply turn and walk away without saying another word. As I round the corner toward the executive offices, Kelly steps directly into my path like she's been waiting for this exact moment. Oh, hi, Maya, Kelly says, her voice artificially high and innocent, in that way that immediately puts me on guard. Just so you know, there's a petition going around the staff. Some of the employees feel like you're abusing the system, you know? Skipping ranks, taking shortcuts that the rest of us don't get to take. I look at her directly, my patience finally wearing thin. Did you start it, Kelly? Kelly blinks rapidly and puts on an expression of exaggerated offense. I would never do something like that. I'm just letting you know what people are saying. I don't dignify her obvious lie with a response. I just walk past her, my heart pounding and my throat feeling dry, but my steps remaining firm and purposeful as I head toward what I suspect might be another ambush. The conference room door creaks open when I knock, and inside I find David sitting at the table with his laptop open and his eyebrows drawn together in concentration. Next to him sits Carmen, a young HR recruitment analyst I've only seen twice before. She's sharp-eyed, professional, and today she looks deeply uncomfortable about whatever she's been asked to investigate. Close the door, David says without looking up from his screen. I obey, then he spins his laptop around so I can see what he's been reviewing. On the screen is my complete staff file. Every transfer request I've ever submitted, every certification I've earned, every email that was sent and received regarding my employment. Carmen clears her throat nervously. I started reviewing all the internal employment records when you were appointed to the consultant team. Standard procedure for any major role change. She slides a thick folder across the table toward me. I was confused about why someone with your qualifications and language skills had absolutely no HR advancement or movement for 6 years straight. I opened the folder slowly, my hands trembling slightly as I read the contents. 12 transfer requests denied by Veronica Duval and Mr. Thomas Whitmore, the Director of Operations, Carmen continues, her voice growing more confident as she explains her findings. But here's the interesting part. Your application files were never tagged as underqualified or insufficient experience. She points to a specific section in the documentation. They were tagged as not a cultural fit for advancement. I blink hard, processing this information. Not underqualified, not lacking in skills or education, just not a cultural fit. David stands up and moves to another section of the table. I had my research team dig even deeper into the employment practices here, he says, tapping his laptop screen. Turns out Whitmore has a niece who owns a private translation firm called Whitbridge Global Communications. My blood runs cold as he continues. That firm has been contracting exclusively with this airport for translation services for the past 5 years. They charge triple the market rate for their services, despite having no verifiable credentials in Arabic, Mandarin, or most of the languages they claim to provide services for. I swallow hard as all the pieces suddenly click into place like a puzzle I should have solved years ago. David's voice sharpens with anger. You weren't just overlooked or ignored, Maya. You were strategically blocked and systematically silenced because your qualifications threatened their lucrative little arrangement. I stare at the folders spread out on the conference table, but my mind isn't in this sterile corporate room anymore. It's traveling back 3 years to a rainy Thursday evening when everything felt particularly hopeless. I had just finished another grueling night shift, my hands raw and cracked from industrial bleach, my voice hoarse from calling out gate numbers that passengers barely acknowledged. I remember sitting in the staff hallway at 2 a.m., filling out yet another online job application with trembling fingers that could barely hold the pen steady. It had felt like a long shot, but the company looked promising when I researched them. Whitbridge Global Translations. They had contracts across 3 different terminals. They promised multilingual advancement opportunities for qualified candidates. And their website made everything sound legitimate, professional, and full of potential. It looked like a door that might actually open for me instead of slamming shut in my face. I had spent hours crafting what I thought was the perfect cover letter. I attached all my certifications, double-checked my grammar 5 times, and made sure every detail of my qualifications was presented clearly and professionally. I even researched the company's recent projects and tailored my application to match their stated needs. 2 days later, the response email arrived. It was cold, precise, and dismissive in a way that felt deliberately cruel. Thank you for your interest in Whitbridge Global Translations. Unfortunately, we are pursuing candidates whose professional tone and communication style align more closely with our brand identity. Your assertiveness may be better suited for other professional environments. I remember staring at those words until they blurred together on my phone screen. I had asked myself over and over if I had sounded too confident in my application, if I should have softened my language, played more humbly, maybe erased myself a little bit to seem less threatening or demanding. Now the truth snaps into place with devastating clarity. That rejection hadn't come from an algorithm or an objective review process. It had come from a gatekeeper who saw my qualifications and felt threatened. Whitmore's niece, a woman who was running a translation firm with no real fluency in Arabic, Mandarin, or most of the languages her company claimed to provide services for, but who was charging triple the standard rates to fake expertise she didn't possess. The same woman who had probably skimmed my resume, seen my legitimate credentials and native-level fluency, and laughed before typing that rejection email. My knuckles turn white as I grip the edge of the conference table. I remember how that particular rejection had stung more than all the others because it felt so personal and deliberate. Like someone had looked me in the eye through that email and said, "Not you. Never you." Now I understand why. It had nothing to do with my tone or communication style. Nothing to do with my actual qualifications or fitness for the role. It was because someone with fake credentials had already claimed the throne, and me, with my braids, my tired eyes, and my perfect pronunciation, represented an existential threat to their entire fraudulent operation. Carmen looks up from her notes, sensing the shift in my energy. "Are you okay?" she asks softly, her voice filled with genuine concern. I close the file slowly and deliberately. "No," I say honestly, but now I can see the whole picture clearly. My voice is flat and controlled, not broken or defeated. Just ready for whatever comes next. Carmen nods with understanding. "And there's more. The news article that came out this morning, the one questioning your credentials and suggesting you manipulated your way into this position? She pulls out another document. It was submitted through an encrypted proxy server, but our IT security team was able to trace the metadata back to its original source. She pauses, meeting my eyes directly. It was uploaded from a computer terminal in the staff lounge, the same terminal that Veronica Duvall and Kelly Morrison have been using for their breaks. I close my eyes for a moment, letting this final piece of evidence settle into place. David sits forward in his chair, his voice taking on a sharp, decisive tone. This isn't just office politics or workplace drama, Maya. This is systematic suppression, deliberate fraud, and it's about to explode into a much bigger story. I stare at the evidence spread across the table in front of me. Strangely, I don't feel angry anymore. I feel something much more powerful and dangerous. What do we do now? I ask. We start with this, David says, his voice carrying the weight of someone who's about to change everything. Tomorrow, you're leading the public welcome session for the incoming Middle Eastern diplomatic delegation. You'll be speaking publicly, we'll be broadcasting it to the press, and the entire airport community will be watching. He pauses, letting the significance of this sink in. The original translator who was supposed to handle this event has been removed from the schedule. You're taking over completely. My hands tremble slightly, but not with fear, with anticipation. I'm not asking if you're nervous about public speaking, David adds, his eyes intense and focused. I'm asking if you're ready to burn this whole corrupt system down if they try to stop you. I look up at him, and for the first time in years, I feel like the person I was always meant to be. I've been burning quietly for 6 years, I say, my voice steady and sure. Let them feel the fire for once. The sky outside the international terminal is still dark when I step through the sliding glass doors at 6 a.m. But inside, the lights are absolutely blinding. Everything in the VIP wing gleams like polished marble. Silver-framed security gates, digital banners welcoming the diplomatic delegates in Arabic, English, and Mandarin, cameras mounted on tripods, international flags arranged in perfect rows, and far too many eyes watching my every move. I adjust the wireless earpiece in my right ear and clutch my folder tighter against my chest. This isn't the staff corridor where I used to push mop buckets and clean up other people's messes anymore. This is the VIP wing, the exclusive area that I used to mop, scrub, and sanitize in complete silence while diplomats and executives drank champagne and made deals that would affect thousands of people. Now I stand at the edge of the media zone, wearing a professional badge around my neck, ready to speak to a room full of international officials, journalists, airport executives, and enemies who are waiting for me to choke under the pressure. Kelly hovers near the catered refreshment table, pretending to adjust pastries and arrange napkins. But I can feel her eyes tracking my every movement. Veronica stands stiffly by the corner exit doors with her arms crossed and her lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. Diana isn't physically present in the room, but her fingerprints are everywhere. From the cold stares I'm receiving to the overly rehearsed seating arrangements that seem designed to make me feel isolated and unwelcome. I take a deep breath and center myself. David approaches from behind and places a calm, reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You ready for this?" he asks quietly. I don't nod or give him false bravado. "Let's begin," I say simply. The host, an assistant PR officer who looks nervous about the entire situation, steps up to the podium and adjusts the microphone. "We'd like to welcome our distinguished guest to today's international briefing session for the Cairo-Miami Transit Corridor collaboration," she announces to the assembled crowd. "And now we'll begin with opening remarks from our lead cultural consultant and senior language advisor, Ms. Maya Chen." The applause that follows is polite and thin, but I can hear the silence underneath it. The skepticism, the doubt, the assumption that I'm about to embarrass myself and everyone watching. I step forward, one measured step, then another. Each click of my heels against the polished floor echoes through the room like a challenge being issued. The lights are too bright. The air conditioning makes the room uncomfortably cold. But when my voice comes through the microphone, it's warm and confident. "Good morning," I say clearly into the mic. "Before I continue in English, please allow me to greet our distinguished guests in their own languages, with the respect and recognition they deserve." And then I shift into Arabic, and my voice flows like a river, fluent, full, formal, and completely natural. No accent, no hesitation, no stumbling over complex phrases or diplomatic terminology. I speak as easily as if Arabic were my native tongue. Eyes widen throughout the audience. Several of the Middle Eastern delegates tilt their heads forward with surprise and obvious delight, their faces lighting up with genuine appreciation. Then I switch seamlessly to French for the European representatives. then to Mandarin for the East Asian delegation. 3 languages in under 60 seconds, no notes, no translation apps, no pauses to think or remember vocabulary. I'm not just translating words from one language to another. I'm communicating, building understanding, mediating cultural nuances, and establishing trust between people who might otherwise struggle to connect across language barriers. When I return to English, the atmosphere in the room has completely transformed. They're no longer sitting back in their chairs waiting for me to fail or prove that I don't belong here. They're leaning forward, engaged, listening intently to every word. Language is never just about words, I say clearly, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. Language is identity, culture, respect, and human dignity. When language is misused, it can offend entire communities. When it's ignored or dismissed, it can erase people's humanity. But when language is used with care, precision, and cultural understanding, it can build bridges where there were once only walls of misunderstanding. A man in the front row, tall, distinguished, wearing an elegant suit with a diplomatic badge, nods slowly with approval and respect. I turn to the next page in my folder, and my voice takes on a more serious tone. Unfortunately, the initial briefing materials that were prepared for this important diplomatic event included multiple translation errors that could have caused significant problems. A ripple of surprised murmurs moves through the crowd like a wave. I can see Veronica shifting uncomfortably in the back of the room, and Kelly's face stiffens with obvious alarm. I hold my gaze forward, professional and unflinching. One phrase, when translated literally, implied that Middle Eastern passengers were statistically more likely to misunderstand basic gate instructions. This implication was rooted not in factual data, but in cultural prejudice and harmful stereotypes. The ripple becomes a stronger wave of uncomfortable shifting and whispered conversations. These translation errors came from an external vendor that was approved without proper verification of their linguistic credentials or cultural competency. I continue matter-of-factly. Their mistakes could have caused serious diplomatic strain and damaged important international relationships. However, these errors were identified and corrected by me during my review process. I let those words land and settle before continuing. No boasting, no self-congratulation, just a clear statement of fact. Respect begins with recognition, I say, closing my folder with a decisive snap. So let this moment mark a new standard. Not just for this terminal, but for every institution where silence has been allowed to bury skill, where prejudice has been permitted to waste talent, and where qualified voices have been systematically ignored. Then I step back from the podium. The applause doesn't explode immediately. Instead, it rises gradually, building from scattered clapping to something genuine and sustained. Even the diplomatic official in the front row stands up to applaud, followed by several others. David nods once from the back of the room, and I can see the satisfaction and pride in his expression. I return to my seat as my legs tremble, not with fear or nervousness, but with the pure adrenaline that comes not when you run away from a challenge, but when you stand perfectly still and refuse to move for anyone who tries to intimidate you. I've barely settled into my seat when the Arab delegate approaches me, his distinguished face showing genuine warmth and respect. He speaks to me in fluent Arabic, his voice filled with emotion. "You speak like my daughter used to," he says quietly, switching between Arabic and English so that others nearby can understand his meaning. She was told by her supervisors to become quieter, to make herself smaller, to not draw attention to her abilities. You just reminded me why she should never have listened to them. I smiled genuinely for the first time all morning. "Then please tell her to speak louder," I reply in Arabic, then repeat it in English for the benefit of the people listening. The world needs to hear what she has to say. Veronica doesn't approach me during the reception. In fact, she leaves the room entirely before the question and answer session even begins, slipping out through a side door like she's trying to escape before anyone can ask her about the translation problems I mentioned. But Kelly stays. She hovers around the edges of the crowd, watching and waiting for the crowd to thin out. When most of the diplomats and press have moved on to private meetings, she finally sidles up to me with her trademark fake smile. "Well done up there," she says, her voice dripping with that syrupy sweetness that I've learned to recognize as a warning sign. "But just remember, Maya, it only takes one mistake, one slip-up, one moment of overconfidence to bring everything crashing down." I turn to face her directly, my voice steady and clear. "Then don't stand so close to me, Kelly. You might be the one who makes that mistake." Kelly blinks in surprise, clearly not expecting me to respond with such directness and confidence. I walk away without another word, leaving her standing there with her mouth slightly open. Later that evening, I sit in a corner office that David had arranged for my temporary use. I've kicked off my professional heels and folded my jacket neatly over the back of my chair. My laptop is open on the desk, and my inbox is filling with messages faster than I can read them. Emails from embassies asking for consultation services. Messages from professional translators in other cities who want to collaborate. Requests from airport facilities in different states asking for advice on their multilingual programs. And scattered throughout all the professional inquiries are personal messages from Black women I don't know, saying things like, "I saw you speak today and you sounded exactly like me," and "Thank you for not making yourself smaller." I don't cry, but I do let my breath out slowly and whisper to the empty office, "You finally saw me." A gentle knock comes at the door and Carmen from HR peeks in with bright, excited eyes. "I thought you'd want to see this right away," she says, handing me a printed document. It's a detailed financial audit of the translation vendor contracts that Whitmore had been approving for years. Page after page of inflated invoices, duplicate charges for services that were never actually provided, and a comprehensive list of staff emails from various employees who had flagged these irregularities over the years. Every single one of those employee complaints had been ignored, dismissed, or resulted in the person who raised the concern being quietly reassigned to different departments. "I'm not the only one who noticed the problems," I say softly, scanning through the documentation. "No," Carmen replies with satisfaction. "You're just the first one who refused to shut up when they tried to silence you." I smile faintly at her words, feeling a sense of validation that goes deeper than any professional recognition. That night, I close my laptop and turn to stare out at the runway lights blinking steadily in the distance. My voice had always been sharp and clear, but tonight it felt like it had finally echoed far enough for people to hear it and respond. Gate. A27 had never seen this many people gathered in one place. The crowd includes airport executives, professional translators, staff members from every wing and department of the terminal, representatives from partner airlines, foreign delegates in perfectly tailored suits, and plenty of press with cameras and recording equipment. But none of them know what's about to happen. None of them realize that this isn't just going to be another diplomatic photo opportunity or routine press conference. I stand just off stage behind a temporary backdrop that's been branded with the airport's global outreach logo and mission statement. My fingers trace the folded edges of my prepared speech, but my eyes aren't focused on the paper in my hands. Instead, I'm staring at the man standing casually near the refreshments table, smiling and shaking hands like he owns not just this room, but the terminal itself, and possibly the air that everyone is breathing. Thomas Whitmore, Director of Operations. Calm, untouchable, politically connected, and completely confident that his position protects him from any consequences. He's smiling that same smile I've seen him use when he shakes hands with donors, when he nods politely during cultural briefings he clearly doesn't care about, and when he quietly stamped "denied" across my transfer applications 12 different times over the years. I've seen that smile before, and I know exactly what it means. It means he believes this room, this terminal, and everyone in it belongs to him. Carmen appears beside me backstage, speaking quickly in a low voice. "Breathe," she says urgently. "David's briefing the media team right now, and the board of directors is here. They're all here to watch this." My heart skips once, but not with fear, with certainty, with the knowledge that today won't end with polite applause and handshakes. Today will end with truth, consequences, and accountability. Across the terminal, I can see Veronica pacing nervously near a side pillar. She hasn't made direct eye contact with me since the diplomatic welcome session this morning, but her rigid posture says everything I need to know. She knows what's coming, and she's bracing for impact. The moment arrives faster than I expected. David steps onto the small stage and taps the microphone to get everyone's attention. "Thank you all for joining us today," he begins, his voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "I'll keep my opening remarks brief, because we have important business to discuss." He pauses, letting the anticipation build. This week, our airport hosted a delegation of international partners to discuss how we can reimagine and improve our approach to cultural translation, guest treatment, and multilingual support services. Another pause. It's a conversation that is long overdue, and unfortunately, the reason for that delay was not a lack of qualified personnel or resources. The room begins to tense as people sense that this isn't going to be a routine celebration. Behind that delay was a deliberate wall, David continues, his voice growing stronger and more pointed. A wall built not from language barriers or cultural misunderstandings, but from internal barriers designed to suppress talent, overpay unqualified vendors, and systematically silence the people who tried to speak up about these problems. The atmosphere in the room shifts completely. This is no longer a diplomatic reception. This is about to become a reckoning. Maya Chen, David says, turning toward where I'm standing. Please join me. I step forward, and I don't need the prepared speech anymore. The words I need are already there, burning inside me after 6 years of silence. My voice, steady and clear, cuts through the tension in the room like a blade. My name is Maya Chen, I begin, and the microphone carries my words to every corner of the packed space. 6 years ago, I was hired at this airport as a barista. Not because I couldn't do more, not because I wasn't qualified for better positions, but because someone in a position of power decided that's all I was allowed to be. I can see Whitmore's smile beginning to falter, though he's still trying to maintain his composed facade. Over those 6 years, I applied 12 times for roles in cultural coordination, translation services, and international communication. My credentials were stronger than most other applicants. My language skills were native level in 6 different languages. My educational background included specialized training in exactly the areas where this airport needed help. I open my folder and hold up the first document. But every single time I was rejected without meaningful explanation. In this file are the actual reasons that were listed in my personnel records. My voice grows stronger as I read from the official documents. Not a cultural fit, lacks executive presence, no formal recommendation from management. All of these rejections were signed personally by Director Thomas Whitmore. Murmurs ripple through the crowd, and I can see camera flashes starting to pop as journalists realize this is becoming a major story. I hold up another set of documents, these ones even more damning. Here is a comprehensive list of translation service contracts that were awarded during that same time period to a private firm called Whitbridge Global Communications. Triple the standard market rate for these services, despite the fact that this company had no verifiable language certifications for Arabic, Mandarin, or most of the languages they claim to provide services for. The murmurs are getting louder now, and Whitmore takes a step forward from his position near the refreshments. This is completely inappropriate, he barks, his voice cutting across the room. This is slander and defamation. David doesn't even flinch. He steps closer to his own microphone and speaks with calm authority. We traced every payment, Mr. Whitmore. We verified every email in the approval chain. We documented every fraudulent certification that was submitted by your niece's company. The room erupts into surprised conversations and the rapid clicking of camera shutters. Carmen steps up beside me, her voice clear and professional as she addresses the crowd. Our internal audit also discovered dozens of suppressed transfer applications and promotion requests. Not just from Ms. Chen, but from other employees as well. The pattern shows systematic discrimination, primarily targeting Black employees and women, regardless of their qualifications or performance reviews. I turn my attention to Veronica, who has gone completely pale and is pressing herself against the wall like she's trying to disappear. And as for my direct supervisor, I continue, my voice carrying clearly across the now silent room. She buried every document I submitted, ignored every request I made, and actively participated in keeping me assigned to cleaning duties while I watched less qualified people get promoted around me. Veronica's voice cracks as she tries to defend herself. She wasn't the only applicant. There were established procedures. There were rules that everyone had to follow. No, I say firmly, cutting her off. There wasn't a fair process. There was racism. There was fear of change, and there was the convenience of maintaining a system that benefited the people who were already in power. A heavy beat of silence passes through the room. Then, David turns back to address the crowd directly. As of this morning, Thomas Whitmore has been suspended pending immediate termination for fraud and discriminatory hiring practices. Veronica Duval has been removed from all personnel oversight responsibilities and placed under formal internal review. Security guards step forward from their positions near the exits. Whitmore's confident smile collapses entirely into shock and disbelief. "You can't do this," he starts to protest, his voice rising with panic. "You did this to yourself," David says flatly, his tone leaving no room for argument or negotiation. As the security team escorts Whitmore toward the exit, Veronica follows behind him, pale and trembling, clearly realizing that her career at this airport is over. But the room isn't finished with revelations yet. Something unexpected starts happening in the back of the audience. People in staff uniforms, janitors, baggage handlers, cafeteria workers, maintenance technicians begin stepping forward from where they'd been standing along the walls. They aren't speaking or shouting. They're just clapping. Slow, heavy, deliberate applause. The kind of sustained recognition that comes from people who never expected to be seen, never thought their experiences mattered, and certainly never imagined that someone would stand up publicly and tell the truth about what really happens behind the scenes. I swallow hard, my voice dropping to almost a whisper as the emotion of the moment overwhelms me. We're not asking for special treatment or unfair advantages. We're just asking for recognition, for the opportunity to use the skills we actually have. David turns back to the microphone for his closing statement. And starting immediately, that recognition becomes official policy. Every hiring decision and promotion over the last 5 years will be audited by an independent review board. Every qualified employee who has been buried in this system will be reviewed for appropriate advancement. And we will never again allow brilliance and talent to be hidden behind uniforms and enforced silence. The applause that follows is different from the polite, restrained clapping at diplomatic receptions. This is louder, messier, but completely honest and authentic. Later, as the crowd finally begins to disperse and the media pack up their equipment, I find myself sitting on a simple bench near Gate A27. I've kicked off my professional heels and let my shoulders relax for the first time in what feels like weeks. For the first time in a very long time, I'm not performing or proving anything to anyone. I'm just existing, just being present in this moment without having to justify my right to be here. Carmen sits down beside me on the bench, and there's a sense of shared accomplishment in the comfortable silence between us. "You did it," she says softly, her voice filled with genuine admiration. I look out at the gate doors where passengers are still boarding flights, where the normal rhythm of the airport continues despite everything that just changed dramatically behind the scenes. "No," I reply thoughtfully. "We did it. You, David, everyone who was willing to look at the evidence and demand better. I couldn't have done this alone." Behind us, the airport continues to buzz and hum with activity the way it always has. Announcements echo through the terminals. Wheels roll across polished floors. Conversations blend together in a dozen different languages. But something fundamental has shifted in the atmosphere, something that goes deeper than policy changes or personnel decisions. For everyone who was watching today, for everyone who has ever been told to stay in their assigned place and accept limitations that other people decided for them, the boundaries of what's possible have moved. Because someone finally refused to stay quiet, and because enough people were willing to listen and act on what they heard. The office smells like fresh paint and expertly brewed coffee. Sunlight pours through the wide glass windows, catching the gold lettering on the door that reads, "Maya Chen, Director of Multicultural Communications," in elegant, professional script. I stand inside the office alone, barefoot, with my heels placed neatly under the mahogany desk. The silence in this space isn't heavy or oppressive. It's earned. Earned through scraped knees and sleepless nights, through swallowed pride and words that were finally spoken when they mattered most. On the wall across from my desk hangs a framed photograph from the press conference where everything changed. Beside it is a picture of me and my sister Luna at my original college graduation, both of us holding hands with the edges of our smiles slightly blurred from the camera movement, but our joy completely clear and genuine. I glance down at my laptop screen, where dozens of unopened emails are waiting for my attention. Speaking invitations, consulting offers, collaboration requests from international organizations. 2 universities have already reached out about guest lecturing opportunities, and one envelope from Cairo, handwritten in elegant Arabic script, sits unopened on my desk. I don't reach for the Cairo letter yet. Instead, I turn toward the door as a familiar knock sounds. Carmen's distinctive 3-tap pattern. She steps into the office with bright, excited eyes and what looks like a flash drive in her hand. "How's the final edit of the documentary?" I ask. Carmen hands me the drive with a satisfied smile. It's stunning, completely honest, painful in the right ways, and still ultimately hopeful. David outdid himself. We walk together down the corridor that I now know by heart. The same halls where whispers used to follow my every step. Where I once felt like an intruder who didn't belong. Now the same corridors echo with open greetings and respectful nods from colleagues who see me as exactly what I am. A professional who earned her place here. In the main conference room, David stands at the head of the table surrounded by senior board members, department leads, and executives. But what makes this gathering different is the back of the room, where staff from every level of the airport hierarchy are present. Janitors, baristas, technicians, security guards, no longer silent or invisible, but included as stakeholders in the changes that are happening. David gives me a nod, and the room dims as the screen behind him flickers to life. The documentary opens not with traditional narration or explanatory text, but with my voice, clear and unwavering. I was never invisible. They just refused to look. The images that follow tell the complete story. Me speaking Arabic to the panicked father and his daughter, Kelly glancing smugly as the coffee spills in slow motion, Veronica looking down at her clipboard while I clean the floor behind her, a freeze-frame montage of rejected applications, and a close-up shot of the line that reads, "Not a cultural fit," stamped across my personnel file. Then comes the reversal, the diplomatic welcome session where I spoke in 6 languages, the delegates rising in genuine applause, the board meeting where names were finally held accountable and consequences were delivered. Murmurs of recognition and approval ripple through the conference room as people see their own experiences reflected in the story being told. The documentary ends on one quietly powerful shot. Me standing behind the coffee counter, pouring a perfect cup, then looking directly into the camera lens with steady, uncompromising eyes. "I still make coffee sometimes," my voice says in the final moment, "but now I choose who I serve it to." The applause that breaks the silence when the screen goes dark is real and sustained, coming from people who understand exactly what that journey represents. When the room finally quiets, David speaks to the assembled group. "We're proud to announce the official launch of the Voices Unseen Initiative, a comprehensive equity program designed to identify and elevate underrepresented talent that already exists within our workforce." He turns toward me with obvious pride. "The program was designed by Maya, will be led by Maya, and is named in honor of every voice that was ignored until someone finally decided to listen." Later that same day, I returned to my office to find a new piece of mail waiting on my desk. This envelope is sealed in deep green paper with gold trim and official-looking stamps. I open it carefully and find a letter from the University of Applied Linguistics in Amsterdam. Inside is a formal offer for a visiting professorship position, along with an invitation to help build an international exchange program specifically designed to support students of color in linguistic studies. At the bottom of the official letter, there's a handwritten postscript from Professor Vanton that makes me smile. "Some talents are never truly hidden. They're just waiting for the right moment to speak." I let the letter rest on my lap for a moment and think about the mop handle I used to hold, the names I memorized while sweeping floors in silence, the coffee spills I cleaned up while more qualified candidates were promoted around me, and the bitter stares I endured while keeping my dreams alive in secret. Then I stand up from my desk and walk back into the terminal. Gate 27 is still there, still smells the same, still has that familiar grind of wheels on tile, and the buzz of overlapping voices in multiple languages. But something essential has changed. People notice me now. Not because of a scandal or out of pity, but because my story cracked the glass ceiling wide enough for others to see through it and imagine their own possibilities. Behind the barista counter, there's a new girl working the morning shift. She's young, dark-skinned, nervous, and I watch as she fumbles with a cup, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment when the espresso shot doesn't pour correctly. I step beside her counter and speak gently. "Relax," I say with encouragement. "Take a deep breath, reset the machine, and try again. You've got this." The girl does exactly what I suggest, and this time the coffee lands perfectly in the cup. "What's your name?" I ask. "Jasmine," she whispers, still nervous but grateful. "Do you speak any other languages besides English?" The girl pauses, then admits quietly, "A little French, and I'm pretty fluent in Japanese." I smile warmly at her. Don't ever hide those skills. Languages are superpowers, even when other people don't understand their value yet. A woman approaches the counter, a tourist with a visitor badge clipped to her purse and a slightly starstruck expression on her face. "Excuse me," she says, looking directly at me. "You're the one from the video, right? The documentary about the airport discrimination?" I nod calmly. The woman fumbles for her phone, clearly wanting to take a picture. "Do you mind if we get a quick selfie?" I lean into the frame beside her. "Only if you tag the coffee artist behind me too," I say, gesturing toward Jasmine. "She's next in line for great things." The woman smiles genuinely and snaps the picture, making sure to include all 3 of us. As I walk away toward my office, I hear Jasmine whisper to the next customer with newfound confidence. "She's our boss now," not said with surprise or disbelief, just the simple truth. Back in my office, I place a new item on the shelf behind my desk. Not the commendation from the board of directors, not the framed contract from the documentary production, but a single worn paper coffee cup. Written on the side in black Sharpie, in my own handwriting from years ago, are the words Arabic, French, Mandarin, Italian, English, Spanish. I had written that list during a particularly frustrating day when no one believed I could speak anything other than English, when my qualifications were being questioned by people who couldn't pronounce half the languages I spoke fluently. Now it sits on my shelf. not as proof of my language skills, but as proof of something much more important, that some dreams don't die. They just wait underground until the conditions are right for them to grow.